ladies, whenever you're ready.
Today we're going to be discussing the role of a female during the Elizabethan era. What rights did women have during the Elizabethan era?
Women did not have many rights during this era. They had some rights that involved education, but even then that was limited and dependent on your wealth.
So how did their education work back then?
If you came from a wealthier family, you often had a tutor who came to your house when you were around 5, but if you were less fortunate, then you usually had no form of a formal education.
What rights weren't women granted during this time?
Women were not allowed to vote. They could not have any jobs that dealt with law, medicine, or politics. They also, their only job was seen to be marriage, that was their only career option.
Explain what it was like to be married back then.
Women could be married at age 12 if they had parent permission. They also had to give a dowry. That was considered their portion of marriage. And it was legal for men to chastise women, which means insult harshly or even beat.
Can you explain the appearance of women?
Women, there was actually a law that determined what type of clothing, what color clothing you could wear. The more wealthy people wore more elaborate clothes, which were more fancy, but if you were less fortunate, it was the same style, but it was not as fancy or elaborate as the wealthy. And they also determined what you could wear based on how much land you owned and how much money you made. And also the appearance for a woman was important because they all wanted to be the desired look was to be pale. And so many of them would stay indoors or even cut them to bleed out so they could stay pale, it would make them look more pale. They wore makeup often to make themselves more pale, and they didn't know it, but the makeup was actually poisonous, so a lot of them died early on in life. The men who did the young boys who played their parts in theater often died also because they wore the same makeup.
So women weren't able to act in plays back then?
No, it was seen as dishonorable for women to act in plays. That's why the young boys who their voices weren't fully developed and they weren't strong would play with them, would play their parts, and that's how they died often because of the makeup they wore.
That is all today for our discussion on the role. Oh, just kidding. One more thing. What was religion like during this time?
Religion was a very important part of their culture. They would often go to church around 7 or even 5 in the morning. And women were taught in church that women in her greatest perfection was made to serve and obey man. So they were taught that in church. And if a baby was not baptized within the first month of their birth, their parents received a fine.
Okay, now that is all today for our discussion on the role of a female. What do you have to
The first month of their birth.
The one thing that you talked about, the education of women, they were taught skills when they did have those tutors. Those skills were much different than what men were taught. They were taught dancing and music and languages and most importantly etiquette skills, which just maintaining a household, acting like a proper young lady. It was in every family's best interest to get their daughters married off to a possible better person to increase rank of that family. So in a lot of cases, women were even sent off to live with noble families to learn those skills and be surrounded by that nobility in hopes that they can increase their social status. Unfortunately, when it came down to the actual marriage and the arrangement, a lot of times that dowry that women had to come in with, either land, property, or livestock, or money, if you were in a very, very low class, chances are you do not have that dowry enough for a man to be like, okay, I accept this as your dowry, I think that's a good benefit for me. And oftentimes they did not get to increase that social status, but there was always that attempt or try. So probably women in this case were educated just as much as Shakespeare, and that's one of the controversies of how did he write all these magnificent things if he did not have any formal education of going past, let's say, the 8th grade. You know, I can't quote that exactly, but the schooling that Shakespeare would have got would have been more, you know, math, reading, writing, more of the skills versus dancing and languages and how to set a table and stuff like that. So, good job. Did you make it? There you go.